Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into, well, a really fascinating stack of source material on a group you might have heard of, but maybe don't fully grasp, the Nation of Gods and Earths.
Yeah, also known as the 5%ers.
Exactly. And the story here is pretty wild, isn't it? How this relatively obscure urban group had such a massive, outsized impact on culture.
It really is one of the most surprising examples of cultural transmission. We're talking about a group that strongly denies being a religion, but their, let's say, unique theology got woven right into the fabric of global pop culture.
It's incredible. And if you've ever said, word is bond, or you greet someone seriously with peace, or, and this is a big one, if you call a good friend G, you're actually using language that comes straight out of their teachings.
Absolutely. And that G is the perfect starting point, actually.
Right. What does it mean in their system?
Well, when a 5%er calls someone G, they're often tapping into their supreme alphabet. G stands for God.
Good. Yeah.
But it gets deeper. Within their system, it can also break down to mean gold, or even government concepts they link back to the idea of the self-sovereign black man. It's a lot of meaning packed into one letter, really dense.
So our mission today is basically to unpack all of that complexity. We're going to look at the NGE's intellectual roots, where these ideas came from.
Explore their core beliefs, some of which are definitely controversial.
Yeah, definitely. And, crucially, figure out how this unique culture ended up being such a powerful force in hip-hop worldwide.
And to really get it, you have to start with that core teaching they inherited, partly from the Nation of Islam. It divides everyone up.
Into three groups, right? Based on percentages.
Exactly. It's like a cosmic social structure they lay out.
So what are these percentages? Let's break it down.
Okay, first you've got the 85%.
The majority.
Right. And they're described as deaf, dumb, and blind. Basically, the masses who lack knowledge of self. They're easily misled, easily controlled by outside forces, just, confused.
Okay, the 85%. Then there's the 10%.
Then 10%. These are the bloodsuckers of the poor.
Oof, strong language.
Very. They're the elite, the powerful. They have knowledge, but they deliberately use it to mystify and control the 85%, keep them down, keep them ignorant.
Right, so the 85%, the 10%, which leaves the crucial number.
The 5%. These are the poor, righteous teachers.
Okay.
They are the gods and earths. Their whole purpose, their mandate, is to teach that knowledge of self, specifically to the black race, to wake up the 85% and free them from the influence of the 10%. That's really the revolutionary heart of it all.
Got it. Okay, so this whole framework, this teaching, it didn't just pop out of nowhere. You mentioned the Nation of Islam, but it has deeper roots in black liberation movements, right?
Absolutely. You really have to trace the intellectual lineage back. The NGE builds on these earlier movements that were challenging, traditional white-centric ways of thinking about religion and identity.
Where do we start? Marcus Garvey.
Let's definitely start with Garvey. His Universal Negro Improvement Association, the UNIA, back in the early 20th century, he was pushing black liberation theology, self-sufficiency, black pride, economic independence, foundational stuff.
And then came the Moorish Science Temple, Noble Drew Ali.
Yes, crucial step. Noble Drew Ali introduced this idea that African Americans were descended from what he called the Asiatic black race, which was kind of this umbrella term for all non-white peoples.
Okay.
And importantly, they really emphasize science-like, rational thought, observation over traditional faith-based religion, that sort of secular scientific approach to identity. That's a key piece the 5%ers inherit.
Which leads us right to the Nation of Islam under Elijah Muhammad. That's where the system gets more formalized.
Yeah. The NOI brings in the Supreme 120 lessons, this whole radical alternative history. They taught that God actually took human form in W.D. Fard. And they were very structured, very disciplined, advocating racial separatism, strict moral codes.
Okay, so that's the backdrop. Now the split happens. The founder of the 5%ers, Clarence 13X, he's the NOI, right? A veteran, knew Malcolm X.
That's right. Clarence 13X Smith, Korean war vet, served in the Fruit of Islam, the NOI's security wing. He was definitely in that milieu, contemporary of Malcolm X, but he broke away around 1963-64.
Why? What was the disagreement?
Well, the core issue was theological. He flat out rejected the NOI's central teaching that W.D. Fard was Allah.
Okay, so what was his revelation?
His teaching was, in some ways, even more radical for the time. He taught that the Asiatic black man, meaning the black man right there in America, is God, literally, God incarnate.
Wow, Not a messenger of God, but actually God.
Exactly. He famously said Allah is not a spook god, not some mystery being up in the sky, not transcendental. Allah is the self-created black man walking the earth right now.
The ultimate rejection of transcendence, then.
Absolutely. And this had practical consequences. Instead of replicating the NOI's mosque hierarchy, Clarence 13X, who started going by Father,
Father Allah, right.
he took his lessons straight to the streets, to the disconnected, often poor young people in Harlem and other urban centers. He empowered them individually with this idea that they were divine. It was much more decentralized, much more focused on that street-level connection.
Which probably explains why they're so insistent, even today, that they're not a religion. They call it a culture, a way of life, because they reject that transcendent spook God.
Right. But, functionally, if you look at it through the lens of religious studies, they have all the elements. They have beliefs, a code of conduct, rituals, a community. Scholars sometimes use frameworks like Catherine Albanese's Forces Creed, Code, Cultus, Community to analyze them as effectively a new religious movement, even if the members reject that label.
Okay, so let's talk about that creed, the core stories. And we have to start with probably the most well-known and definitely the most controversial one.
Yeah.
The Yaqub story.
Yeah, the Yaqub origin story. This is their explanation for, for the existence of the white race, who they often refer to as the devil in their lessons. The belief, as the sources describe it, is that about 6,000 years ago, there was this brilliant but rebellious scientist named Yaqub, described as big-headed.
A mad scientist, basically.
Pretty much. And the story goes that he deliberately, through a long process of genetic manipulation or grafting that took 600 years, he created the white race.
Wow. That's a very provocative origin myth. How does that fit with the message of liberation and self-divinity for Black people?
Well, from their theological perspective, it's necessary. The Yaqub story serves to define the 10%, the oppressors, the source of evil in the world, as this specific historically created entity. It establishes the racial framework that underpins their belief in Black divinity and superiority. It identifies the enemy, essentially, and validates their mission to rescue the 85% from that specific creation.
It frames the whole struggle in these dark, cosmic, racial terms.
Exactly, and it ties back to that rejection of transcendence. Even the explanation for evil is rooted in this earthly, scientific, albeit mythical event.
And sticking with that theme, the only prayer Father Allah reportedly taught really hammers home that self-focus.
Absolutely. In keeping with rejecting the spook god, the primary affirmation isn't directed outward, it's inward. It's simply, Allah is the God, and he cannot die.
You're affirming your own divinity, your own eternal nature.
Precisely. Self-worship, in a sense.
Okay, let's shift to practice. The cultus and the code. You mentioned rituals. The main one seems to be called doing science or building. This involves their supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet. What does that actually look like? It sounds kind of abstract.
It's essentially a ritualized form of theological discussion and interpretation. Imagine a group gathering, maybe on a street corner, maybe in a park, maybe indoors. They call these gatherings parliaments.
Parliaments, okay.
And they use this system, this code, to analyze everything. The supreme mathematics assigns specific qualities or concepts to numbers 0 through 9. The supreme alphabet does the same for letters A through Z.
So they break down words and numbers.
Exactly. They use the mathematics and alphabet to decode words, concepts, current events, passages from their lessons, trying to find deeper meaning. It's a way of thinking, a way of interpreting the world through their specific lens.
Can you give us like a super simple example, just so we can grasp the idea of doing science?
Sure. Okay, very basic. In the supreme mathematics, the number 1 is knowledge. 2 is wisdom. 3 is understanding. So in a build, someone might say, you got to get the knowledge 1 first, then you apply it with wisdom 2, and that leads to understanding 3. It becomes this foundational way of structuring arguments and conversations.
Interesting. It's like they created their own internal coded language using basic math and the English alphabet.
That's a good way to put it. It reinforces group identity and provides a framework for everything.
Now, we also need to talk about the code part, specifically the gender codes. This has been a point of criticism and internal debate. Women in the NGE are called Earths.
Yes. And the traditional teaching outlined in the sources defines the Earths, the women, as secondary but most necessary.
Secondary but necessary.
Okay. They're often represented by the moon, which reflects the light of the man, who is the sun. And in the mathematics, they're linked to the number 6, which stands for equality.
But wait, if 6 is equality, Doesn't 7 represent God, which is associated with the man?
That's precisely the traditional patriarchal interpretation. Equality 6 is seen as inherently less than or unable to reach godhood 7.
That seems problematic.
It is, and it reflects the influence of the NOI's more rigid gender roles. There's also a dress code aspect mentioned in the sources. Earths are expected to wear refinement.
What does refinement mean?
Generally, modest dress, long skirts, sometimes head coverings. It links back to those conservative moral codes, standing out against the more liberalizing trends of the time. And even today, it's about projecting a certain kind of righteous image.
But it's important to know, right, that not everyone within the NGE accepts this patriarchal view. The sources mention pushback.
Oh, absolutely. That's a key point. Many Earths reject that secondary status. They reinterpret the symbolism, emphasizing the necessity of the moon, or arguing for the concept of a female goddess, or seeing man and woman, sun and moon, as complementary equals. There's definitely internal tension and evolution around these interpretations.
We chose the conflict when a movement that values individual understanding tries to maintain strict codes.
Exactly. That decentralized nature makes uniform interpretation difficult.
Okay, so we had this small but doctrinally intense group, mostly in New York City in the 60s and 70s. Highly decentralized, specific language, unique worldview. How on earth did their specific slang, their concepts, jump out of Harlem and Brooklyn and basically become part of the global lexicon through hip-hop?
This is really the most stunning part of the story. It's about timing and location. Hip-hop culture exploded out of the exact same environment, the same neighborhoods, the same socioeconomic conditions where the NGE was thriving.
They're there at the beginning.
Literally. 5%ers were at the early park jams, the parties thrown by pioneers like DJ Kool Herc. They were part of that foundational scene. Some sources even credit NGE members with helping coin the famous chant, "Hip-hop, you don't stop."
Wow, and they brought their language with them?
Exactly.
Oh.
The NGE essentially provided a ready-made, cool, coded, intellectually stimulating vocabulary that young MCs just soaked up. It sounded deep, it sounded conscious, it sounded different.
Give us some examples of that linguistic transfer.
Well, peace, as a greeting, Father Allah consciously simplified the Arabic Assalamu alaikum to just peace, to make it accessible for the youth. It became the hip-hop greeting almost overnight.
Okay, yeah, that's huge.
Or think about calling something really good the bomb.
Yeah. Where does that come from?
That apparently came from NGE members bombing each other during builds, like hitting each other with rapid-fire recitations of their lessons, trying to catch the other person out. So something impressive, something powerful became the bomb.
That's amazing. So the music itself, especially what became known as God Hop, essentially acted as a vehicle, like a missionary wing.
Pretty much, yeah. Though maybe unintentionally at first, it became the primary way NGE theology was spread. And the reach was just incredible. You had artists like Rakim.
A legend. Considered one of the greatest MCs ever.
Absolutely. And he wasn't shy about it. He used the NGE universal flag in his videos. His lyrics are just dense with 5%er concepts, the supreme alphabet, the mathematics.
And groups like Brand Nubian.
They were even more explicit. Some sources literally called them a virtual missionary wing because their songs were so packed with the lessons, almost like sermons set to beats.
And then, of course, the Wu-Tang Clan, RZA's famous quote.
Yeah, RZA claims something like about 80% of hip-hop comes from the 5%, which might be an exaggeration, but it speaks to the perceived influence.
And they were masters of the coded language.
Totally. RZA especially. The sources talk about how he'd weave in these incredibly specific references that only initiates would fully get, like breaking down his own name. RZA becomes ruler zigzag zegala using the supreme alphabet.
Which means absolutely nothing to the average listener.
Right. But to someone in the know, it's an immediate signal. It made the music simultaneously global pop entertainment and a kind of private conversation, an insider kind.
It's like hiding the knowledge in plain sight. And because hip-hop went global.
So did the language. But often stripped of its original meaning, it became what some call simulacra. You'd have kids in, I don't know, Vancouver or Paris or Tokyo saying, word is bond or peace, or dropping a G with absolutely no idea it traced back to this specific theology from 1960s New York.
Just adopted as cool slang.
Exactly. Although the influence wasn't just language. The movement did inspire actual followers, small groups, internationally. Sources mention the UK, Haiti, where they translated lessons into Creole, even Ghana.
So wrapping this all up, the central finding from this deep dive seems to be this massive paradox. You have this small, decentralized, anti-establishment group.
A group that really prides itself on rejecting hierarchy. rejecting materialism in a way.
And they achieved this incredible world-spanning influence, far bigger than their actual numbers, precisely because their core ideas got embedded into the highly commercial global machine of pop music.
That tension is right there. They preach against the system, but the system became their biggest amplifier.
And think about their core practices: rejecting written dogma, preferring oral transmission, the ritual of building through discussion. It's all very anti-institutional, almost anarchic in spirit.
Which leads to a really provocative final thought, doesn't it? What does it actually mean when a belief system like this one, aiming to empower individuals, avoid central control, finds its most successful way of spreading is through, well, the often commercialized, sometimes violent, frequently patriarchal lyrics of global hip-hop?
It's a huge question. Does the medium inevitably change the message? Or was the core message of self-divinity and empowerment so potent that it transcended the contradictions of its delivery system?
Maybe the street culture hip-hop spoke to was just fundamentally ready for a cosmology that put them, the marginalized, right at the center as gods. That self-affirming core, Allah is the God and he cannot die, meaning you are God.
Maybe that's what resonated so powerfully.
Set to a good beat, it travels easily.
It really does. It's a powerful testament to how culture, language, and belief can intertwine in unexpected ways.
So now you know the science behind the G.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.